Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel because it is new, and your support helps this project grow every single day. Now, let's dive into the incredible story of the 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass, a car that many people judged only by its beauty but had no idea of the monster that lived under its skin and the shock it caused on American streets during one of the most competitive eras in automotive history. The late 1960s were not just about style or chrome or the American dream rolling on four wheels. They were about proving dominance, speed, muscle, and engineering ambition. And in 1969, Oldsmobile decided to show the world that it wasn't simply a brand for comfortable family sedans or respectable middle-class cars. They unleashed something far more dangerous, far more surprising, and far more underestimated, a Cutlass so aggressive, so lively, and so ready to fight that many muscle car enthusiasts didn't expect it to take down rivals that supposedly were out of its league. To understand why the 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass became such a legend, you have to imagine the landscape of American streets at that time. Ford was roaring with its Mustangs, Chevrolet was stamping its authority with the Camaro and the Chevelle, Dodge was terrifying streets with the Charger and Coronet, and Pontiac had just shocked the world with the GTO. In the middle of all that, Oldsmobile could have easily remained quiet, satisfied with its reputation for refinement. But no. They wanted blood. They wanted challenge. They wanted to take their place among the street kings. And to do that, they built a machine that didn't scream loudly with exaggerated design or unnecessary extravagance. Instead, it spoke through brute power, mechanical integrity, and a personality that transformed it into a true monster dressed in elegance. The 1969 Cutlass was a strategic weapon disguised as a gentleman. When it rolled off assembly lines, people noticed its beautiful body lines, the balanced proportions, the unmistakable front grille, the muscular stance, and the confident posture. But most people had no idea that this same elegant profile could unleash violent acceleration, deep exhaust growls, and an aggressive behavior normally expected only from pure muscle machines. The Cutlass wasn't born to be just a pretty car, it was engineered to punch above its category, to outperform drivers who thought they had the upper hand, and to defend Oldsmobile's honor in an era where every streetlight was a battleground and every Saturday night was a test of who had the guts to put their machine on the line. One of the most fascinating parts of the 1969 Cutlass saga is how it blurred the lines between a comfortable cruiser and a street racer. It offered quiet, smooth, luxurious rides for families and professionals during the day, but when the sun went down and the engines warmed up, the same Cutlass transformed into a wild beast capable of leaving black stripes of burning rubber on asphalt, humiliating competitors who underestimated it, and shocking anyone who thought they were dealing with a simple mid-size Oldsmobile. Few cars of that time could switch personalities so dramatically without sacrificing reliability or refinement. And that dual identity is one of the reasons why this car became unforgettable. Drivers who sat behind the wheel of a 1969 Cutlass often describe a sensation of both control and danger. The steering felt responsive, heavier than many competitors but precise enough to make the car feel planted. The suspension, especially with performance-oriented setups, gave it a confident grip on corners that many muscle cars of the era simply didn't have, as some of them were powerful in a straight line but clumsy in curves. The Cutlass, however, managed to be stable at high speeds, comfortable in city driving, and shockingly quick when the driver decided to unleash its hidden power. This mixture created a rare bond between car and driver, one that made the Cutlass not just a vehicle but an extension of personality, ambition, and emotion. And then there was the heart of this monster. What made the 1969 Cutlass truly special was its engine lineup. Oldsmobile didn't settle for something basic or good enough. No, they installed engines with genuine muscle car DNA, engines capable of transforming a nice-looking car into a serious threat. From the smaller V8s that offered smooth torque to the infamous 350 rocket that impressed everyone with its responsiveness, the Cutlass could be configured in ways that made it both accessible and dangerously capable. The torque delivery was instant, the acceleration forceful, and the way the engine climbed through the revs felt like a wave of unstoppable strength. When properly tuned, the Cutlass was not just fast, it was unpredictable, raw, and brutally exciting. But what truly elevated the Cutlass from strong to monstrous was the mindset of its owners. Many people bought the 1969 Cutlass not to cruise quietly but to modify, tune, and extract every ounce of potential hidden inside the rocket engines. It became a favorite among street racers who recognized its underestimated nature. While everyone paid attention to the big names, Camaro SS, Mustang Mach 1, Charger R/T, there was always that one Cutlass sitting quietly, clean, elegant, unthreatening, until it destroyed someone in a race and left them questioning everything they thought they knew about American muscle. That psychological aspect made the Cutlass even more legendary. It wasn't the loudest. It wasn't the flashiest. But it was fast, strong, and ready to embarrass those who underestimated it. Another fascinating point is the sound. Anyone who ever heard a tuned Rocket 350 or a warmed-up Oldsmobile V8 from that era remembers its voice forever. It wasn't as high-pitched as a small-block Chevy nor as thunderous as a big Dodge. Instead, it produced a deep, metallic, aggressive growl that felt alive, like something breathing with fury and waiting to be unleashed. That sound became part of the Cutlass's identity. You could hear it approaching before you saw it. You could feel the vibration in your chest when it idled heavily at a stoplight. And when the driver hit the throttle, the Cutlass didn't just accelerate, it roared, dived forward, and signaled to everyone on the street that beauty alone did not define it. This was a car built to fight. The 1969 Cutlass also earned a reputation for surprising police officers during late-night runs. Many drivers told stories of being chased by patrol cars, only to watch the Cutlass pull away effortlessly thanks to its torque and stability at high speeds. Of course, stories tend to become more dramatic over time, but what makes them believable is the mechanical reality. The Cutlass was fast, stable, and very capable of outrunning many vehicles of its time. It wasn't just a pretty car for Sunday drives, it was a machine that demanded respect on the streets. And let's talk about the design again, because although performance is the soul of the 1969 Cutlass, its body was part of what made people fall in love instantly. The curves were perfect, the proportions were almost artistic, and everything was sculpted to convey balance and strength. The wide stance, the powerful shoulders over the rear wheels, the long hood, the aggressive yet elegant front fascia, all of this created a visual identity that aged like wine. Even today, over 50 years later, the 1969 Cutlass still commands attention. People stop to look. People ask questions. People want to take pictures. It carries the aura of something timeless, something born in a golden era that will never return, something that represents freedom, rebellion, and pure American automotive glory. Inside the car, the Cutlass didn't disappoint either. It combined sportiness with comfort in a way that made long trips feel like luxury experiences. The seats were supportive, the dashboard was ergonomic for the time, and the driving position felt natural and confident. Everything inside the cabin reflected Oldsmobile's philosophy of delivering refinement without giving up performance. This interior charm also contributed to the car's dual personality, calm and civilized during the day, but ready to unleash hell when the driver pushed the pedal deep into the floor. Collectors today still debate the true value of the 1969 Cutlass, because while it is respected, many believe it deserves far more recognition. This car was a bridge between eras, a car that defined the late 60s but also announced the coming changes of the 70s. It was a symbol of engineering ambition, boldness, and a refusal to be overshadowed by louder competitors. Owners remember not just the speed, but the feeling, the sensation of holding the wheel tightly as the car lunged forward, the rush of adrenaline as the rocket engine awakened, the satisfaction on people's faces when they realized the Cutlass wasn't just gorgeous, it was powerful, dominant, and capable of defeating rivals who underestimated it. The streets of 1969 belonged to many cars, but the Cutlass held a unique place because it didn't need exaggeration to prove itself. It simply arrived, performed, and left its mark. And while some muscle cars became famous for their wild personalities, the Cutlass became legendary for its silent confidence. A monster doesn't always roar to be feared, sometimes, it just waits patiently, ready to strike when the opportunity arises. That was the 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass, a beautiful machine that hid a wild, unstoppable heart inside. As the legend of the 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass continued to grow across American streets, something interesting started to happen. People who once ignored Oldsmobile as a gentleman's brand began to fear the Cutlass in races and late-night highway encounters. The car didn't need a huge spoiler or bright stripes or exaggerated scoops to intimidate anyone. Its intimidation came from reputation, from whispered stories in workshops, from the look in the eyes of drivers who had been beaten by one. They would say things like, "Don't underestimate a Cutlass, especially a '69, and this phrase alone was enough to create an atmosphere around the car that other midsize models struggled to achieve. What made the Cutlass such a street monster wasn't just raw horsepower. It was the way the car delivered its power, its predictability mixed with danger, the sensation of confidence mixed with adrenaline. When you stepped on the throttle of a well-maintained or modified 1969 Cutlass, the torque came instantly, pushing the body back with a force that made passengers grip the seats. The rear wheels would often chirp or spin lightly even with moderate acceleration, and when driven aggressively, the car felt like a heavy yet explosive animal charging forward. The rocket engines were famous for durability, but they also had a particular way of delivering power, smooth at first, then violent, and then solid all the way through the higher RPM range. The Cutlass managed to be both civilized and brutal, a combination that few cars could offer at that time. Some muscle cars were pure chaos, loud, shaky, rough, dramatic. Others were quiet and comfortable but lacked the aggressive punch that true enthusiasts wanted. The Cutlass stood in the between zone, a perfect middle ground that allowed it to attract all kinds of drivers. You could take your family out for dinner in it without anyone complaining, yet a few hours later, you could be lined up at a stoplight next to a Camaro or a Roadrunner, heart beating fast, waiting for the light to turn green. And when it did, the Cutlass could surprise even the most confident racer. The weight distribution and overall balance of the '69 Cutlass helped it handle better than many competitors. While straight-line speed was common among muscle cars, cornering ability was not. But the Cutlass offered stability around curves that many drivers didn't expect. Part of this came from Oldsmobile's engineering ethos. They cared about comfort and quality, which unintentionally gave performance drivers a better foundation when they modified suspensions, shocks, and tire setups. A properly tuned Cutlass could handle winding roads with surprising grace, offering a combination of confidence and grip that made drivers feel like the car was far lighter than it actually was. One thing rarely mentioned but deeply important is how the Cutlass became a hero for everyday Americans. Not everyone could afford a top-spec GTO or a big-block Chevelle. But the Cutlass allowed middle-class workers to have a machine that looked good, felt premium, and still had the muscle to defend its honor. People worked double shifts, saved money, negotiated deals at dealerships, they did whatever was necessary to get one. And when they did, that car became a source of pride. They washed it every weekend, polished the chrome, adjusted the carburetor, tuned the engine, and made sure the car ran smoother and faster each month. This feeling of ownership, of improvement, of personal identity wrapped around the Cutlass, helped transform the model into a cultural symbol. There were countless stories of young drivers picking up a used '69 Cutlass in the early 1970s and discovering that the car had far more potential than its price suggested. Some rebuilt engines in their backyard. Some added performance camshafts, headers, or bigger carburetors. Others kept the car stock but maintained it with obsessive care, knowing the hidden strength it held. These cars became legends not only for what they were from the factory but for what they became in the hands of passionate owners. Across neighborhoods and small towns, you could hear the deep rumble of a Cutlass echoing through the streets, announcing its presence like thunder arriving before a storm. Another essential part of the Cutlass legacy is how it competed indirectly with the muscle car giants without ever being treated as a direct contender. The Chevelle SS, the Mustang Mach 1, the GTO Judge, the Charger R/T, they were the poster stars. But the Cutlass was the quiet professional waiting in the background, preparing its moment to strike. Many people underestimated it simply because it didn't show off as much. But that underestimation became its superpower. While others bragged and shouted, the Cutlass delivered results on the asphalt. And drivers began to respect this. Those who underestimated it learned the hard way, and those who knew its potential gained the advantage of surprise every time they lined up next to a more famous competitor. In the late '60s, car culture wasn't just about performance, it was also about identity. Each car represented a personality. The Mustang represented youth and rebellion. The Camaro represented confidence and aggression. The Charger represented power and intimidation. The Cutlass represented something different: intelligence, elegance, and unexpected dominance. It was the car of someone who enjoyed refinement but also loved speed, someone who didn't brag but let actions speak louder, someone who appreciated design but demanded performance. This mixture made the Cutlass stand out in a way that remained subtle yet unforgettable. Inside the cabin, the driving experience also contributed to the car's monster reputation. The steering wheel, thicker and more solid than many contemporaries, gave drivers a sense of authority. The dashboard layout, clean and organized, made everything feel under control. The seats allowed for comfortable long drives, but they also held passengers firmly when the driver decided to test the car's limits. The Cutlass was not a stripped-down racer. It was a complete package, a performance machine wrapped in comfort, built for real life and real roads. One of the most iconic elements of the 1969 Cutlass era was the late-night racing culture. Picture the scenes: empty stretches of highway, neon lights from gas stations, groups of young people gathering, engines idling, the smell of fuel in the air, and the sound of exhaust notes bouncing between buildings. In those moments, the Cutlass became a legend. Drivers whispered about the unknown Olds running a Rocket 350 with secret mods, or the Cutlass that had just beaten a 396 Chevelle or a 383 Roadrunner. Whether every story was true or not didn't matter. What mattered was the reputation. And reputation spreads like wildfire. There were also stories of Cutlass owners who went head-to-head with police cars of the era, many of which simply couldn't keep up. The Cutlass's stability at high speeds and its strong torque helped it escape tight situations. Of course, people exaggerate, but the foundation of the stories is real. The car was fast, reliable, and strategically brilliant for quick acceleration and quick getaway driving. Even today, older mechanics, retired cops, and former street racers talk about the Cutlass with a mix of respect and nostalgia. As years passed, something else happened. The Cutlass aged beautifully. While some muscle cars lost their charm, the simple elegance of the 1969 Cutlass kept growing stronger. Collectors realized it wasn't just a midsize car from the late 60s, it was a masterpiece of proportion, engineering, and purpose. Cars of that era that combined beauty and power in such a balanced way became rarer over time, increasing the Cutlass's value in the classic car world. People restored them lovingly, repainted them in their original colors, rebuilt rocket engines from scratch, and returned the Cutlass to the glory it once had on the streets. What truly made the 1969 Cutlass unforgettable was its emotional impact. People remembered the first time they saw one, the first time they heard the engine roar, the first time they sat behind the wheel, the first time they raced one, or the first time they lost to one. It became part of personal histories, part of American culture, part of the legacy of the golden age of muscle cars. And today, when someone sees a '69 Cutlass cruising down the road, they don't just see a classic car, they see a moment frozen in time. They see a machine that once dominated streets with silent confidence, a car that offered power without arrogance, beauty without fragility, and performance without compromise. The Cutlass wasn't just a car, it was an attitude, a lifestyle, a code. It represented the idea that true strength doesn't always need to shout. It can be quiet, elegant, hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass was exactly that, a monster disguised as beauty. A machine that captivated hearts during the day and conquered streets at night. A legend that never needed to be loud to be feared. A masterpiece that today, more than 50 years later, continues to command admiration from collectors, enthusiasts, and anyone who truly understands what made the golden era of American muscle cars unforgettable. And so, the story of the 1969 Cutlass remains alive, not just in museums or car shows, but in memories, in stories passed from generation to generation, in the sound of a rocket engine firing up for the first time in years, and in the smiles of those who recognized the car instantly. The Cutlass walked the line between elegance and violence with perfection, and no matter how many decades pass, that dual identity remains its greatest legacy. It was beautiful, but it was also a monster. And monsters, especially ones born in 1969, are never forgotten.